When I first drove up to the house, I parked the car and I was stunned by its majesty. This house had something. There was an energy to it, and it was almost like it was communicating with me just from me pulling up outside of it. It was one of those homes that has such a dominating presence that it's a personality to itself, and it held secrets inside that I was going to get to see once I walked in through that door. And I felt excited to have the privilege of being one of the people that was going to be able to walk into that, because the house was so beautiful and it was so old. It was from the 1800s. And I was about to walk into this time capsule, and so many people who live around it probably have never been inside or seen it before. So I always approach going into homes in general, but definitely homes like this, with reverence. There were definitely many spirits in the house, and it was like they were all having their own separate storyline. And it was a really interesting feeling. The house itself was so vast, and the ceilings were so high that it just created this gothic, ancient feeling as you walked through each room and the kitchen and, the sitting room and the reception room. It was like going through a time capsule, because there were rooms that they had set up that were, rooms that we don't do anymore, where they used to have reception rooms. So people didn't have access to seeing your entire house when they came to visit. They would come in and go directly into a reception room, and this is for guests, and they either had pocket doors that would close them into that room, or curtains or regular doors that would close so that the person only had access to that room. They were not privy to the rest of the house. And today we just don't really have rooms like that. We might have offices or things of that nature with the door, but having rooms like that and having the space to have rooms for that purpose just doesn't happen anymore in everyday life. So it was just quite amazing to go into each room. And where I had one of my first experiences, that I had never had this experience nor had it since. Well, I can't say I haven't had it since. I had something similar to it happen, but it was a really interesting experience when I walked into what was known as the smoking room. And I remember going around different rooms of the house on the first floor, being shown the different areas and just kind of picking up energy from the house. And I was drawn to this particular room, and I stood outside of it, and she told me this was, here's this room over here. And I said, okay, I'm going to go in, because I felt right away something in that room. And when I walked into the room, I literally crossed the threshold of that door, and I was by myself entering that room. And it was like when I crossed that threshold, I stepped into a scene in time where there were people in that room, and I was literally seeing a scene in time, like a replay of an event that had happened there. And it was just an everyday event, and I had never had that before. So it was really interesting because literally when I stepped over the threshold of the door, I entered this other, like almost a memory of that room in action. It was happening. And when I stepped over the threshold into it, a person literally walked right past me, and it was like I had to stop so that I didn't run into the person. But I realized right away that the person didn't even see me. So I was basically intruding on this memory from the past. I was entering this time capsule of this memory of what had happened in this room. And it was just an everyday event. And there were men. It was all men, and they were in smoking jackets. And the person that passed me had a pipe in his mouth, and he was, talking and walking around, kind of pacing, and like he was thinking about something that was being said. And I didn't hear all the conversation, but there were a few gentlemen, and they were talking, and there was a drawing written up. Some kind of architectural, drawing laying on a table, and there was something really important being discussed. So it was men engaged in, they were smoking their cigars and their pipes, but they were conducting business, and they were discussing something. And so I tried to pay attention to what they were talking about. And the room was beautiful. It was, shelves of books in deep mahogany, and they were built into the wall, and the whole room was this dark mahogany color and old Victorian furniture. And the owner of the house was there, and he was standing in front of this brick fireplace, in front of this old wooden table that had these drawings laid out. And I heard a little snippet about what he was talking about was a new railroad that was being built, and they were discussing the importance of, how far it would go, and just the overall where this track was going to be laid, and why, and the choices that they were making, and the time frames, and how long it would take to do. And so they were really conducting a lot of business and thought about this new railroad that was currently being laid, and the discussions in regards to how it was going, and how far they would build out. And it seemed very much not a final thing, but that they were kind of still discussing and wrapping up exactly the end result of this project. And so it was very interesting for me to be in that room, because I stood there from a different time, witnessing as an observer a time that had passed. And it was like the room was communicating to me a memory. It was allowing me to see a memory of the types of things that had been conducted in that room. And it was very friendly. It was like the house was talking to me, and I had never experienced seeing anything like that before. And I just thought that this was the most amazing thing that I had ever seen in this sort of, kind of ghostly realm. It was so just truly fascinating. The next room that I had gone into was the reason why they actually called me. And they had called me because apparently neighbors had continuously seen an old Victorian woman standing in the window of a bedroom upstairs, and this bedroom faced the backyard that had acreage. Not a huge acreage, but it had some acreage, but it was still close enough where other large homes faced, where their backyard windows faced her backyard windows. And neighbors had continually spoken with her and said that they had seen an old Victorian, a girl actually in old Victorian dress in the window. And that particular window was facing her daughter's room. And so this was the thing that had caused her to call me to come in to kind of cleanse the house, but also just to see what was going on in the home and to see if there was any truth to that. So when I went upstairs and I went into this room, I already knew that particular part of the story. I didn't know the age of the girl, and at the time they just said a Victorian woman, that someone keeps seeing a woman in a white dress. So that's all I knew about the house in general. And I typically don't like to know a lot of information so that I can go in and just see what I see, because I just feel that it adds more validity to what I'm doing and what I'm seeing if I see things that they are also seeing but they hadn't told me. And so this had already happened in the house, in some other rooms, but the minute that I walked into the room of that door, and the way the room was set up, there was a closet door. So you kind of went into the opening, and then if you turned slightly right, it opened up into the rest of this very large room. But when you walked in the initial entryway, you saw a closet door, and then it would kind of guided you slightly off to the right where the room opened up. And the moment that I walked into the room, I saw a girl in front of the closet. But it was interesting because the closet door had it was just a wooden door. But what I saw was a mirror on that door. And I saw a young girl dressed in white in a Victorian dress, and it was up to her neck, those old-fashioned collars. And she was it was like she was playing dress up. She had this dress on, and she was admiring, the dress, and she was kind of spinning and holding her skirt out, and she was looking at it and kind of doing this little swaying, dancing movement. And she was talking to someone in the room. I didn't see anybody else, but it was almost like sisters or friends, someone she was close to, and they were admiring dressing up and looking pretty and being dainty and the joys of being feminine and really enjoying her life, and then I saw her walk over, and I saw her look out the window, but she the whole time was just doing these little dancing, kind of prancing movements of joy, with her dress. And there was nothing to be scared of. She wasn't trapped in a room or anything. I felt like I was witnessing again a memory of an energy that was still in that room, and perhaps she was still there and would visit because she loved that house. And she was a young girl. I would say, she was anywhere from, probably, 15 to 16, probably 16 to 20 years old. Probably less than that. I think actually she was probably 16 to 18 years old. She was very young, but back in the day, they dressed so differently that it made them look and feel more mature, and people were so different back then. They were animated, but animated in a very elegant way, not today where you hear a lot of cussing and you see all these other things. They were very demure back then, and they were very dainty and feminine and sweet. And so that can also give you the sense of youth, but then the way that they dressed and carried themselves also could make them a little older and you think they're younger. So, it just was a very interesting thing. So I would place her probably between 16 and 20 years old. And, it just was a pleasant room, and I was able to tell, the family about that and say, you have nothing to worry about here. This is nothing but good energy in this room. And then I had walked through, the master bedroom was very large and just a beautiful room. But when I walked into their master bathroom, which was also huge, I picked up on, more current energy, and that was the energy of just, the owner was with me at that time, and I just said, I was drawn to the shower area. They had installed a more modern shower, and I said, I feel a lot of crying in there. There's a lot of crying in the shower. And when I said that, the owner just looked at me, and her eyes like teared up. And I just looked at her and I said, "That's you?" And she just shook her head yes, because clearly she was having problems, and I found out later that she was having issues with her husband. But she would go into the shower, take a shower, and that's where she would cry. And so the energy of that was in the room. Now, I went through the whole house, but not every part had a story to it. It just was grand and just amazing. But the last place that I'll tell you about is into the cellar. And those cellars were quite vast back in those days, and they stored, they would jar food, and so the remnants of all these old jars, things still pickled and jammed, from hundreds of years ago, were still there, part of the original house. So again, it was quite amazing to enter a cellar in this kind of time capsule. And I didn't see any person there or anything in particular like that, but what I did see was this beautiful, beautiful, old, heavy organ. And I was very sad to see that there was all sorts of like bullet holes in it. And I just picked up on a presence that told me that the man and the child, one of the male children of the house, were using this beautiful old Victorian organ as like a shooting practice. And I don't know what the energy was, if it was someone who used to play it, which would make sense if it was the house speaking to me, because the house and the land itself has an energy to it. Just like the Native Americans believe that all living things are alive, I do as well. I think the wood is alive, the ground is alive. Whatever you do to anything from nature, it holds that energy and it speaks to me when I go in. And so I didn't get it. I just couldn't get a sense of where the energy was coming from, whether it was someone who made it, or it was the house, or if it was someone who used to play it. But clearly the energy was speaking to me, saying that it was very, very sad that this beautiful piece of history was being used as a target practice. And so I remember, I speak to it in my own head and say, I will talk to the owner and let them know about this, and try to get them to stop doing that. And so, at the end, I had this conversation with the lady of the house, who was the one that was, taking me around the property and showed me everything, and then kind of set me loose so I could do my thing without any extra energy. And we ended up talking about everything. One of the things that was probably the most interesting was, at the end when we sat down and we discussed what I found in the house, and, I told her about the organ downstairs and the energy that I got, and that it didn't want to be used as target practice, and that it's an antique also, just appealing to the current, energy and imploring someone to show respect to a piece of history in the kindest way possible. She said she would definitely talk to her husband about it, but she didn't know how he would respond to, having the organ tell him that it didn't want to be used as target practice. I got the sense from her that he was not a spiritual man, and that he probably just wouldn't understand that. And it's sad when I, see people who don't respect things from the past, especially, antiques, because things are just not made like that today, and so to have somebody just kind of ruin things that someone else would really appreciate, was very sad to me. So the next thing that was really interesting at the end reveal was that, I told her about the experience that I had in the smoking room, and she was really fascinated by that, because when I told her what I saw, and I told her that they were discussing, some sort of plans for the railway that was already being built, and they were discussing it, she stopped me and said, "This is so amazing, because the original owner who built this home was responsible for laying the original train track in that city." And this is where the confirmations come in that are so interesting, because I had no idea. I had no idea of any of that, and I don't worry about whether or not things can be proven or not. I just get what I get, and I relay the information. I hold no attachment to the outcome or whether or not it makes sense or not to somebody. I simply just deliver what I get, and I leave the rest up to them. I trust the gifts that I have and what I get, and that's good enough for me. But it's always really fascinating when somebody can give me a confirmation of something. It's just an amazing thing. And so that Antebellum mansion was one of the most amazing, house clearings, and it wasn't really even, it ended up not even being really a clearing, more of just a blessing on the house, because there was nothing bad there. There was nothing that needed to be cleared. It just was an old house full of memories, and the things that were there, it was like the house was just showing me part of its proudest, moments, and showing me its energy and its life beyond this world. And so with that being said, I will leave you with that beautiful story of an antebellum mansion. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I want to give a shout out to another YouTuber and my friend Marissa Wight, Wight, and find her on YouTube and like and subscribe to her channel if you like to hear ghost stories. She does Weird Wednesdays, so every Wednesday she puts out new content and she tells ghost stories and other weird stories. So if you like story time videos, I highly recommend that you go to her channel, and I have left her link in the description. Please help me reach 50 subscribers. I have a small little community, and I just want to get to 50. And I hope that you guys are coming back weekly to check out my weekly Friday videos. And I might even consider doing what I call Thursday thrillers. So I'm thinking of continuing my ghost stories, but doing them on Thursdays. So let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.